This is a spaceship, grown from food and water. It's produced in here, although she hasn't made one in quite some time. It's okay. But how can she make this out of this? An egg has many layers, so where does she even begin? And does she really need to put that gross stringy stuff in there? Well, let's find out. My name is Marnel, her name is Kip, and here are her organs. We can remove most of these because right now we only care about one organ. It's her ovary. When Kip hatched, it already contained 10,000 eggs. Each egg is just a single cell, only about this big. It has no yolk, no white, and definitely no shell. Each only contains half of Kip's DNA, and when combined with the DNA in the sperm of a rooster, it can grow into a new chicken. I like to call growth like this a process of change. It simply means that something becomes different over time. Everything in life is the result of some process of change. Because of us, chickens went from roaming Southeast Asia as the wild red jungle fowl to this. And neurons in your brain will rewire when you learn cool facts about eggs. And teams of thousands of people need to work together for years to create something as complex as a spaceship. We need spaceships because if I pluck you from Earth right now and put you on Mars, you die almost immediately. Just like what would happen if I plucked an egg cell from her body and put it outside here on Earth. A body like hers is an incredibly complex thing, and it will take time for a fertilized egg cell to grow and divide into the roughly 2 trillion cells that will form the body parts the chick needs to survive. Skin, bones, lungs, an immune system, and a way to take in and digest food. Why doesn't she just keep her chicks safe and fed inside of her body for the 3 weeks they need to develop? Most mammals, including us, prefer it that way. But all human mothers know that gets really heavy. And a bird's gotta fly. Instead, she will invest her energy into building her egg cell a perfect survival package, so that most of the growth can happen outside of her body. This will include everything that we would need to survive aboard a spaceship too. We're going to be needing food, water and oxygen, protection from diseases, from the elements, and from being crushed. And the first item to work on this list is food. We'll be launching our egg in T-8 days. The first 7 of those happen in the ovary, but weirdly enough, our egg cell is not actually attached to it. Instead, it's being held inside a kind of fleshy balloon called a follicle. And this is the part that is attached to the ovary. First, this will wrap a thin layer of cells around our egg cell, which will become the stretchy bag to hold its food. And that food is yolk. When Kip eats food, it goes into her stomach and is absorbed into her bloodstream. There, it gets turned into yolk by her liver. The yolk goes through the blood vessels to the follicle, and that stretchy bag will slowly be getting filled. Yolk is a mix of fats, proteins, and important vitamins like carotenes. This is found in many plants, and it's the same stuff that turns carrots orange. The more carotenes she eats, the brighter orange her yolk will become. Making an egg yolk takes a week, but each day a new egg cell is activated, meaning that there's a whole conga line of yolks of different sizes being prepared inside of her. And our bag of food has now reached a pretty gigantic size. The egg cell has been squished to the side of the bag, and we can recognize it as a tiny, flat, yellowish dot just under its surface. And just remember that that tiny little thing is what all of this effort is about for her. Meanwhile, the follicle has been stretched to its breaking point, and it will tear along its weakest section. That's this part, where there are no blood vessels. And our bag of egg yolk is released into the chicken. It's not attached to anything anymore, and sometimes it can end up somewhere it really shouldn't be. But in almost every case, it's quickly swallowed by a fleshy, pink mouth. That's the opening of this tube. It's called the oviduct, and it's the conveyor belt that will take our egg all the way to the cloaca, also known as our launch pad. But while being held inside this mouth section, our story can take 2 different paths. In option 1, Kip will have mated with a rooster at some point in the past 3 weeks or so, and his sperm will have traveled up the tube and be waiting in here, ready to fuse with our tiny egg cell. Option 2 is that no roostering has happened. All grocery store eggs are, or at least should be, unfertilized. They're unable to grow into a chick no matter how long you sit on it. Now you might wonder though, why would her body put all of that effort into producing an unfertilized egg if it's not going to help her reproduce? Being unfertilized would have been pretty rare in the wild. where hens of the red jungle fowl usually live with roosters. And there's no way a chicken's body can tell if an egg has been fertilized or not and then just reject the yolk. So no matter what happened here, we carry on. After just 15 minutes in here, we go down the tube to get our chick a drink. Welcome to the kitchen. For the next few hours, Kip here will be making egg white. Our main ingredients are proteins and water. When she releases these into her oviduct, the proteins will bind to water and form a kind of gel. If we heat or beat these proteins, they get all tangled up. This turns the gel firm and reflects more light, so the egg white becomes solid and white. But there's a third important ingredient: antibiotics. If bacteria manage to reach the chick before it's grown an immune system, it's game over. But if bacteria break through the shell, they still have to cross a vast ocean full of special proteins that break down their ability to move. But this works best if the egg yolk is held in the center, as far from the shell as possible. And yolk is slightly lighter than egg white. That's why the sunny side is always up. If left to float, this would be a problem. But luckily, we have layers, 4 of them, with different ratios of protein to water, and starting from the yolk, layer 1 consists of really dense white strands. Layer 2 is a thin and runny layer, 3 is much thicker, and the 4th layer is thin again. Maybe you've noticed the difference between those 2 outer layers before, actually. But okay, back up. What are those long fibers for? From here on, the oviduct is not a smooth tube. It's got spiraling grooves on the inside, like in a gun barrel. When our yolk, surrounded by its egg white, travels down, that causes it to spin. Except the top half of the yolk is lighter than the bottom, so it will stay facing the same way even inside the chicken, meaning that only the egg white, including those long fibers, spins around the yolk, coiling up those fibers into springs that will hold the yolk exactly in the center. And that are those white stringy bits in your egg that are called chalazae. And that is why your yolk is always in the middle of your boiled egg. But I'm not even done. From now on, when you crack an egg, notice how the egg cell is always at the top? They sit at the very top of the lighter half, meaning that no matter which way the egg rolls when it's laid, the yolk will automatically spin, so the embryo always faces the hen's warm body when she sits on top. It's a movement that is lubricated by that inner slippery layer of egg white. I think this is so cool, because every layer in an egg has its function. And the order in which they form, so the order in which the egg changes, matters. We couldn't have made these springs before we made the yolk, just like we cannot start building the shell until we complete the next step. Have you ever seen how a spider wraps up its prey in silk? Because that's kind of what we're doing in this next part of the tube. When the egg spins at about 10 revolutions per hour, thin protein fibers are again being produced by the oviduct, coating our egg in 2 layers of egg membrane. We'll see why there are 2 layers in just a bit. Meanwhile, when we zoom in on the membrane, we see that the gaps between these fibers are big enough to let through molecules like oxygen so the chick can breathe, but they're small enough to block any bacteria. We can actually see what our egg looks like at this point, and you can totally try this at home. Place an egg in some vinegar and just leave it there for a couple of hours. The vinegar will react with the shell and remove it, and we're left with a squishy ball. Sometimes you can even see the swirly lines in the membrane caused by the spinning. Just don't drop it like I did. What we did to this egg is sort of the opposite of what's going on in the final part of the oviduct. For the last 20 hours, Kip's body will pump the space around our squishy egg full of calcium and carbonate. These will react to form crystals of calcium carbonate. It's the same stuff that's in seashells and your bones. Which means that an eggshell is just one really weirdly shaped crystal. But like eggs, crystals need to grow from somewhere, and they start in the gaps between the membrane fibers, knitting together membrane and shell. But in order to still let through enough oxygen, proteins will block the crystal growth and leave around 17,000 tiny air channels in the shell, which you can see a lot more clearly on this ostrich egg. And as a final layer, in some cases, a thin layer of colored shell is added. When you brush your egg when it's in vinegar, you'll see that that layer comes off, and there's always white shell underneath. The shell's now ready, and its shape makes it surprisingly tough. Everything a chick needs is now inside, and it can even use some of the calcium in the shell to grow its bones. We're at the final stretch, and it's gonna be a big one. First, our egg flips around. going blunt end first. It might seem weird, but it means that once she's past the hardest part, she can sort of relax and the egg will pop out. To make this go just a little bit smoother, she's coating this egg in one final layer, the cuticle. This ultra-thin layer of protein will act as a lubricant, but once it dries out, it will also help keep out bacteria. The egg's now ready to come out of her cloaca, but we have a problem. Because this is a multi-purpose hole, meaning both the pee and the poop tubes are connected here. And we don't want to smear our fresh egg in bacteria before the cuticle dries, right? So something strange is going to happen. Now, if you can't handle the sight of a chicken butt made out of foam, feathers, and a pair of tights, you can skip to this timestamp. Here's what happens. This final part of the oviduct will turn inside out, pushing that section of the oviduct through the cloaca itself. As that happens, both the poop and the pee tubes get blocked off. The egg won't come out of here, but out of here. We're launching in 3, 2, 1. Whew. While the egg now cools down and the cuticle hardens, the white and the yolk will shrink a little bit. One shell membrane sticks to the shell, the other to the white, causing them to separate at a weak section at the bottom. This forms the air bubble you're probably familiar with, which helps the chick to breathe. And Kip here can finally relax for about 30 minutes, and then the next yolk will be released from her ovary and be swallowed into the oviduct. If her egg had been fertilized, a new process of change would already be taking place inside, turning the egg cell into a chick. But we take our process in a different direction. We will pick the egg, transport it, sort it in a warehouse, distribute it with truck, put it in a supermarket, buy it in a supermarket, cook it, eat it, and make it part of the processes happening in our bodies. They're all steps that depend on what happened before. When any of these complex steps go wrong, your end result will be different. When that happens to an egg, you get to post to the subreddit r/weirdeggs. I advise you to not look that up if you ever want to eat eggs again. I hope that during the process of watching this video, you've changed a little bit yourself. Maybe you'll think differently about chickens or their eggs from now on. Maybe you're reminded of their multi-layered story when you make breakfast and spot that now familiar little dot sitting on top. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments, and I'll try to help out with any questions you might still have. And if you'd like to help me change into a bigger and better channel, well, do the usual stuff. Or if you're wondering how it's even possible for a yolk to float, check out this video about why life floats.